When I decided to learn to model and make dolls nearly 20 years ago, I could never have imagined how this pursuit would bring so many blessings to my life. Opportunities to travel, to meet and work with other people, to make many new friends. These things are only a part of the blessings, but a most wonderful part. I believe there are many doll makers who are as eager to learn about sculpting as I was. I suspect there are too many to reach in seminars. I thought perhaps I could help a lot more people if I did a sculpture demonstration on video. So tomorrow I will attempt to impart what I've learned over the past 20 years in a 1-hour video. Part of the challenge will be to encourage and inspire my students without giving them the false impression that one can do a sculpture in 1 hour. Learning to sculpt, I've found, is a process of developing awareness and skill over a long period of time. It takes a lot of dedication, but a lifetime pursuit such as sculpting is a precious gift indeed. Hi, I'm Dianna. Welcome to my sculpture workshop. I'd like to share some of the things that I've learned about modeling over the past 15 years or so. I'll be demonstrating some of the techniques that I use for modeling, the clay that I use, the types of tools and other materials that I use. And I'll be talking about some of the ideas that I've collected about modeling and recreating a child's head in clay. The first thing I do when I'm planning a modeling project is to get my camera and take some photographs of my model, because I'm going to need these when I begin working in the clay. Okay, so we have the full figure to help to study the proportions. And sometimes it's fun to have a variety of various expressions to choose from. Of course, it's very important to have various points of view of the head, because we need to see the head from all angles, and here's some of the most important ones. The three-quarter view on both sides and the profile. Another important thing to do before starting the project is to plan the size. You have to keep in mind the proportions of your model. For this workshop, we'll be modeling the head of a 2-year-old child. We use the head as the basic unit of measurement in measuring the height of the child. You can see how I can measure roughly with my fingers that this 2-year-old is about 4.5 heads high. Here's a chart showing 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 4-year-old, 6-year-old, 8-year-old, and 10 years old. And you can see how the heads change just a little bit, but the number of heads, going from the 1-year-old at 4 heads high to the 10-year-old at almost 6 heads in height. I want to create a doll 24 inches high of a 2-year-old child. We know that there are 4.5 heads to the height of a 2-year-old child. So I must figure the height of the head of the finished 24-inch doll. I use a calculator to divide the total height of 24 inches by 4.5 heads. This gives approximately 5.3 inches for the height of the head. But I need to increase this by 15 to 20% to allow for the shrinkage from the clay head to the fired porcelain. So I need to find 20% of the height of the head, which I calculate to be approximately 1 inch. So I will model a head that is 6.3 inches or roughly 6¼ inches high. Next, I will draw a head that is 6¼ inches high to use as a guide as I model. I like to encourage my students to draw from photos or from a model because this is a good exercise for the right side of the brain. It will help you develop the same kind of awareness that is necessary for sculpting. Now this drawing doesn't have to be a masterpiece or a perfect likeness, but mainly I'm concentrating on getting the proportions of the face correct, and the size, of course. And one thing we need to take a look at is the proportions of the face. In this chart, it shows various ages of children and an adult, and it shows the midline between the bottom of the chin and the top of the head. And in the very young child, you see the midline comes to about even with the eyebrows, and the eyes are quite a bit beneath the midline. And when we get to 14 years of age to adult, the eyes are just about exactly at the midline. It's a very common error in sculpting for beginners to get the eyes up too high in the head. And this causes the sculpture of the child to look more like an adult. You lose the childlike quality in the sculpture. I'm just making a simple sketch of the profile of the head to help control the size as I'm working, so it doesn't grow, or it helps to keep the proportions correct and the size of the head correct. Here I'm ready to work. I have probably everything I need to model the head. The most important thing is the clay, and it's nice and soft. When you begin, it's important to have it nice and soft for building up the shape. I have sculpture stand and a very simple armature, just a board with a dowel. It's better to have it removable, because later on you might want to take the head off the stand and work on it. I have various sculpting tools, a ruler, calipers, marker, some water, and a sponge. Spray bottle with water for moistening the clay. I have a damp towel to cover the clay so it doesn't become dry while I'm working. And I have my visual materials to use as I'm modeling. Photographs with the various viewpoints, and my drawings to help me keep the size and the proportions correct. During this demonstration, I'm going to be suggesting ways that you can encourage the right side of your brain to take charge, because it's been shown that this is the side of the brain that makes the kind of perceptions that you need to be able to sculpt or draw realistically. It has also been shown that we can learn to shift from left to right brain thinking at will when we learn to recognize and distinguish between the two different ways of thinking in our activities. Here is an example of a right brain activity. I look at a picture or a model. I hold that image in my mind. Then I try to reproduce that visual image in a drawing or a sculpture. I urge you to keep your visual material in front of you and constantly make mental images and project them onto the piece that you are working on. So basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to keep an image in my mind of these contour outlines, and I'm going to project those onto the head as I work. I try to recreate them in the clay. Always studying the visual images. Try not to get too far away from having something in front of me to look at as I work. Here I'm drawing the axis lines. The horizontal to show the midline of the head. The vertical one helps to divide the head into smaller shapes which are easier to see and refine. middle. Looks kind of low. Yeah. Shape an ear, just an ear shape. Don't make eyes and nose and mouth. You just want to do shapes. Large shapes at first, then smaller shapes growing out of the larger shapes. The left brain is the one that is eager to work on the eyes, nose, mouth, and ears, the parts that can easily be named. So we frustrate the left brain by postponing working on these parts as long as possible. Working on the back of the head is a good activity for the right brain, because the left brain gets bored very quickly. So, if you want to encourage or develop the right brain, learn to enjoy working on the back of the head. Balancing. Now and then you may want to take time to even out the surface, although it's important to develop the concentration so that the surface texture doesn't distract you from the images that you have for the shape. So the clay can be rather rough, but you're not seeing the texture and the lines and the shadows in the clay, but your mind is on the contours. But this is a fairly quick way to using this tool to even it out some. And it's easier when the clay is soft than later on. I wanted to, from studying photographs and sculptures and other resources, you learn the shape of the head. Notice there's a sort of a ridge where the head comes up and then slopes to the center for the crown of the head. And from the top, it's a very distinctive shape. It should be smaller at the front, larger at the back. Can you see? Okay. I'm purposely waiting to start the face because this is what the left brain is eager to do. And if the left brain is the one who does this, it's going to make a mess. So we have to encourage the right brain and discourage the left brain. And one way we do it is to always have something to study. Study the contours of the face, make an image, and recreate the contours in clay. This contour here. So I always keep this information in front of me as I'm working. At this point, I'm still not modeling the features. I'm just placing them on the head where they will appear in relation to the axis lines and the midline. I'm using my drawing as a guide. It's a good idea to work from the profile at this stage. This is another way to keep from getting preoccupied with the features too soon. Also, it is necessary to study the three-dimensional relationships of the shapes and contours to give the face the proper depth. There is a tendency for inexperienced sculptors to flatten the face. Working from the profile will help greatly in eliminating this problem. one of the reasons for not spending a lot of time smoothing the surface is that sometimes when you spend a lot of time doing something, you get kind of attached to having it stay that way. And you need to be very, when you're sculpting, unattached and willing to change anything whenever you see it's necessary. So if you don't spend too much time in the beginning trying to make it perfect, then you'll be more flexible in your thinking. I'm studying the photos now. See how this is where you really need to have a light overhead so that the reflection is similar to the way the light is reflected in my photograph. Of course, I had this in mind when I was taking the photographs too. So that helps. When you set a goal for yourself, don't make it too difficult. Don't try to get a perfect likeness. First time you model a head, don't have your heart set on getting a perfect likeness of your child or your grandchild, because that may be a bit too much to try in the beginning. Even for me, it takes a lot longer to get a likeness than just to do a study of a head. Hillary was the first portrait I attempted. I had been modeling heads from snapshots before and was not trying to work realistically. I remember I shot a couple of rolls of film of Hillary when she was playing outdoors on the swings. I had an assortment of viewpoints to work from. I worked on that head over a 6-month period, but I learned so much from that project, and everything I learned I was able to bring to everything I did after Hillary. Learning is a continuous building of skills and awareness. Shifting into another mode of balancing the two sides from the front and the back. Kind of gives you a break from the other way. Okay. I want to show how the eyes go in kind of deep right here. That's why you see this distance here, but as the eyes themselves are kind of on a plane, parallel, perpendicular and straightforward, and then the brows sweep back away from the center, and then right by the eye, the face is about level with the eye. And then the eyebrow kind of blends back away from the eye. So, the back of the neck, in the back, it comes up to about the bottom of the ear before it begins to slope up and away. In the front, it's quite a bit lower. If we spend too much time looking at the front photograph, we don't realize what's happening over here. And one thing you begin to realize is that everything kind of tapers forward from here, from the about where the ear is, which is very helpful to the mold maker, because then we can make a mold that's going to come apart if we follow that logical pattern. For example, when you're looking at a photograph from the front, you'll see a hump here. You might think that the hump is right here and build it there, and it will look funny because the hump is really back there. It just looks like it's here. I could use a wire for this, but I don't have one yet. So I'll try to do it with a knife. Oops. Imitation is a natural way to learn. Watching someone work is an excellent way to learn to do something. In modern times, this way of learning is not common, but I believe that in the past, it was the accepted way. A sculptor would teach an apprentice by allowing him to watch the master at work and copy his techniques and even his style. When this way was abandoned, the art died out. I invite you, for the sake of learning, to imitate my techniques. In fact, I believe it should be acceptable to use my sculptures to practice modeling. Sometimes it's helpful to study a three-dimensional object because there are always things that are not clear from the two-dimensional photographs. Photos can be deceiving. Please don't feel you are cheating if you use a porcelain head that you have lying around as a study model. You have permission to use mine. One of the classic mistakes I've had occur in my workshops is, well, the mouth. It's very complex, and sometimes the students get to the mouth and they just don't know what to do. And they look at this and they think it's all straight across, and they start making this thing. So I have to encourage them to dig out the corners, because the mouth actually curves back quite a bit under the cheeks, which you can't see in the photographs, unless you've taken some from this angle. And it's rare that we have a chance to do that. You can see how far the corners go back, and then the upper lips come way forward in the front when the mouth is just in a relaxed position, not smiling or anything. To this peak here, I don't know what it's called. Okay, now I'm going to try start on the eyes. building up a shape like a lens, because I want to create a round curvature to the eye. Just kind of imaging the spherical shape of the eyeball with only a small portion of it showing. And then I take my tool and continue to shape the eyeball, going back away from this center point. This is very meticulous. It's important to have the clay be a nice soft consistency so that it'll slide off your tool nicely. Although it's actually easier to carve it when it's a little bit more firm, so you just have to use a very gentle stroke at this point. Here I'm building up the lower eyelids, following the curvature of the eyeball by applying tiny bits of clay with the tool and then smoothing and shaping it. The upper lids may require adding some clay. Then I carve and shape the area around the eye with a wire tool. Pop the ear off. Sometimes it'll stay in there. Oops. I could tie it, I guess, if I want it was going to be gone for a long time, but I think it's okay. Maybe I'll try working on the eyes a little bit from this position.
I like to pick it up and look at it from different points of view. Okay, that looks pretty good. In that way.
I hope that this video proves to be helpful and worthwhile for you. Please let me close with a few words of advice. In your sculpting, be patient with yourself, but accept the challenge to overcome difficulties and learn from your mistakes. Have faith that if you seek, you will find, and if you ask, the answer will come. Remember that there's no such thing as perfection, at least not in the things that we create. Only God can make a miracle like the beautiful children that inspire us to sculpt. Be humble and happy in your work. I hope your life is enriched by the opportunity to model a child. Mine certainly has been. I'm so very grateful for having been given a chance to learn, to work, to serve, and to teach through sculpting and doll making.